My home glows, but I will not enter on this night. I cannot open the fiberglass door because it will invite a history that is summed up to this night. I can't tell you how many times friends bailed on sleepovers or birthday parties once they found out where I lived. Well, I can't actually, it's about 16 times. I didn't get it for a while. I thought my home was pretty with the Chinese lanterns and chili pepper lights, and I really believed that everyone could suddenly get busy on the day of my birthday party. I just brought the cake to school the next day and it seemed like no big deal. My friends were fine with me at school and in their own houses. My parents weren't drunk or abusive because they raised me in a trailer park. They were just young. My mom had me at 19 and then converted to Mormonism so she could marry my dad. Her family doesn't talk to her much anymore. I get to see my ample cousins in Fort McLeod every vacation, so I don't care, but I bet that she still does care. If anything haunted my home, it was tired. My mom waitressed at a diner from 9 to 3 and 8 till midnight, and my dad assistant managed a gas station. I remember my mom retreating to the end of her trailer after she picked me up from school, and I, being a merciless second grader, peeled the down blankets right off her again. She would moan and I would crawl into bed with her and play with her name tag. "Mummy, why do you sleep with your clothes on?" I would ask. "Mummy is just really tired, sweetie." "Mummy, can we go to the movies?" "Not today." "The beach?" "Maybe." "Please, please, please." "Maybe, please." "Let Mummy sleep for half an hour and we'll go." "Promise?" "Promise." And so I'd curl up next to my mom, put my freezing and very likely sticky hand on her shoulder, and watch the Mickey Mouse clock until the long gloved hand went halfway around the face. It would hit the 9 and I would start jabbing Mom, probably just as she had fallen asleep, to hold her to her promise. She moved with such adult slowness. I had already pulled on my swimsuit, a hot pink number with orange ruffles on the side. I was pretty proud of it considering it had once shared an aisle with fish sticks. I'd be stalking on the AstroTurf while my mom was still groping through a pile of laundry for anything that wasn't her uniform. "Mom, Mom, 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 Mom," I'd chant, and then she'd come out only to realize I was in no position to rush her because I hadn't found my flip-flops. Most of the time I had lost them, and I took Dad's giant ones and we flip-flopped to the pier. I walked like a scuba diver because they were about 10 sizes too large. When we got to the pier, Mom would pass out on the imported sand beach. It had to be a special occasion to convince my mother to get her hair wet. I'd ask her, but accept defeat after the second entreaty. I had my own pursuits anyways. My imaginary friend was, in fact, the Ogopogo, and he was tantalizingly close to being real when tourists or other crazy neighbors swore they saw it in the water. I'll have you know that even though I explained the Ogopogo as the Canadian Loch Ness Monster, its first sighting was 80 years before Nessie's. Nessie is actually the Scottish Ogopogo. My imaginary friend and I went on many adventures, mostly me riding on his back under the lake. I had a magic bubble that let me breathe underwater, so it totally made sense. That was my childhood. I have no reservations. Then I got my first period and everything went to shit. Somewhere between just sitting on the shore because I had a wet piece of gauze between my legs on a week that sometimes came more than once a month, a fear of tampons, and putting on a bunch of weight for no reason, I learned to respond to comments about my home with an anxiety that sat in my heart like a shot put. I had my first real fight with my parents when Ginny Mathers called her mom to pick her up again right after she had been dropped off. My visits to the lake dropped off in the next 2 years, partly because I cared about how my hair looked. In that time, I also grew a crush on this kid I bossed around in English class because he could be such an idiot. I let him call me by a nickname once reserved by my parents, and I shouldn't have let him have that name, because when I asked him to the dance, he stood me up. Too scared to turn me down in person, I guess. And so I walked back to the park in the dark. And now I am here looking at my family's trailer. I still cannot enter on this night. I stood on our fake lawn for a long time. It was a beautiful evening. warm, crickets chirping, moths throwing themselves at our tiny paper lamps, and which looked like a string of moons around the screen door. Inside, Mom and Dad were doing dishes. I tried to open the door, but I kept stopping myself because I would start to cry, and then what would I say to my parents? I was embarrassed that I had believed him, that I had to stand at the door while others went in, mostly embarrassed that he could make a non-crier like me choke up like a mentally handicapped seal. I gave up and went to the lake. The shore was blissfully empty. The plan was to sit at the end of the pier and have an all-night sob and then sneak back in the trailer with my best poker face, skip an interrogation from my parents. But I couldn't get a single tear out. Turns out I can cry in front of everyone but myself because I'm a tough audience. Instead, I stared into the mind-numbing ripples of the lake. The breeze was slight, and so in the moonlight, the ripples looked like a million tiny silverback bison. And I sat at the fulcrum between peace and a really pitiful tantrum. Then the sudden urge to jump in. This sounds crazy, but I was hoping I could play make-believe again, reclaim my old imagination. It was so easy back then to get so happy over things that literally did not exist. Makes you wonder why anyone would want to grow older. So I jumped in, fully dressed like a young adult that goes to middle school dances and doesn't cry. Splashed around. Hey, Ogopogo, it's been a while, I thought loudly in my head. He was so faded in my mind. Was he blue or green? How big was he? Nope. The magic was gone. Then it occurred to me my cover would be blown. I came back to the trailer wet in my good top and jeans. Oh well. At least I was committed to my lake excursion. I swam out deeper, laid on my back, and listened to the roaring quiet of having my ears underwater. It was easy to fall asleep out there. Maybe that's why we weren't supposed to sleep at night, or swim at night. And then something bumped me, pushed my stomach up out of the water for a second. I freaked the hell out, flipped over into a panicky dog paddle. I smacked my foot on whatever was under me. That made me swim faster until I got to the edge of the pier. To this day,